Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm back with Joe748, and we are going to be covering casino countermeasures, casino surveillance, camouflage techniques, legal considerations, and cover play. So a lot of the non-technical aspects of card counting, but equally important. So Joe748, first off, how you doing?
Doing good. Not as caffeinated.
Not as caffeinated, yeah.
But that's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to take a break.
Oh man, well, we're going to be flying high off of talking about casino surveillance and countermeasures. You excited?
I am, because this is a topic, it's hard to get this information, right?
Yeah.
Inside surveillance information. And in this episode, we are going to feature some of my favorite talking points in T. Dane's latest book, The Art of Casino Surveillance. He had a book several years out that was Behind the Black Dome.
Yes.
And that was catered more towards advantaged players. This book, it's a newer edition. It's catered towards both advantaged players and the management side. So there are some new perspectives in here that we're going to go over, and we're hoping to have T. Dane on the podcast sometime. We reached out, we're waiting to hear back. But until then, I just wanted to let you guys know this book is very good, and we'll go over some cool key points.
Yeah, T. Dane is super smart about all this stuff, and I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but you have, and so that's going to be fun diving in. Well, let's jump right into our mailbag questions, starting with BJA member Skeleton asked, recently, I was at the casino, and I'm a regular at this casino, super small, so they know everyone. And me and the dealer decided to have some fun and try to empty the rack of all the 50-cent chips. Well, I did this except for one chip, then asked the pit boss for a chip refill. Do you think that this has some impact on helping for cover, or do you think that the pit didn't think of it at all? Are there other things that I can do that just look like a young college kid there to have fun and screw around as opposed to someone there to count?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything you can do that doesn't cost you cover, like a cover play or making an improper decision is worth doing to a point. I mean, this might have taken a little bit too much time, but I do like thinking creatively. I just like when a card counter goes to a casino and they make it a point to try to interact with the staff and try to make things fun for them, because it kind of benefits everyone.
Yeah, my only concern is it could annoy the pit boss, because the last thing they want to do is work. And getting a chip fill is going to be more work for the pit boss. So I would be trying to avoid things that are going to irritate the pit boss because he has to do more work. But other than that, yeah, I love to be playful with the dealer or the other players, as long as I can still play perfectly and I feel like it's not drawing unnecessary attention to me. Have fun because it's fun to have fun.
And you got to feel it out. I mean, some of these pit bosses, they're so bored. They welcome any kind of difference in their routines.
Yeah, for sure. And, you can get a thing where the pit boss is rooting for you or whatever the playful thing is. And, SD1's really great at finding ways to interact and have playful banter, whatever it may be, so that you're not coming across as a caricature of a card counter, but just someone there having fun. All right, moving on. Lenny Black 216 asks, if you play rated at a place, do you ever inquire as to your year-to-date win-loss at the player's card desk? I was wondering if it would be a good way to see how close they were to actual, or is it a terrible idea that may alert them to you being a winning player and cause them to look at you?
Yeah, I don't think you going up to the player's card desk and asking for your win-loss is going to trigger to the pit or surveillance. I think it's just they're just not going to notice. And also, it's probably going to be really off and not accurate anyway of how much up or down. So
I've never done this because I've never cared to or bothered to. I have heard of players, former teammates, that there was a local casino we played at a lot, and we were wondering why he lasted so long. It was because they had him as a 6-figure loser when he was up at the casino. Something like that. We had the story where it was Beachcomber. Remember Beachcomber? He got stuck here in the US during COVID, couldn't get back home to Thailand. And so he got into card counting and he played a whole bunch, but it was a casino he'd been gambling at before. he kept track. He would ask them. And when he was done, when he finally was going to be able to leave and go back to Thailand, he was up 50 grand and they had him as down some, 5-figure amount. I've never done it. I don't really care, but it would be interesting to know. I don't think it's going to draw attention asking the Players Club. They're totally disconnected from casino countermeasures, surveillance, pit bosses, anything like that. So yeah, it could be interesting. I've never bothered.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go just for your own peace of mind to be like, yeah, they think I'm a big loser here. So if that relieves your anxiety of playing at the table and that helps you get through your day, sure.
Next question we have comes from BJA member Spike. Says, how do you deal with sister properties after a back off or a trespass at one? Also, will you ever go back after a trespass? So we got a couple questions there. Yeah, there's a lot of these. How many Caesars, Harrah's properties are there around the U.S.? How many MGM properties are there around the U.S.? There's some other Penn and, these other big chains. How do you deal with that?
I mean, I definitely go back to places that are sister properties for sure. Sometimes I won't do it in the same trip, though. If I get backed off at Mystic Lake, I'm not going to go over to Little Six or whatever the place is called right after, because it's just so unlikely that I'm going to get time.
That's smart.
I personally don't go back to places that I'm trespassed at, regardless of what the police and other casinos in the past have accused me of. But I actually never have. It's just not worth the headache for me. I'd rather just find a new place I've never been. It's not worth the anxiety and all that. But other people have the opposite approach.
Yeah, there are plenty of card counters that kind of like laugh at it or take it very lightly. Tommy Highland's a famous example where he says in Vegas, he goes back every trip, every year or every 6 months, he comes back to the same properties and they say to him, hey, we told you can't be here. We're going to arrest you for trespassing if you come back. And then they've said that to him a dozen times or 24 times or whatever. In Nevada, there is a 2-year limit. And so there's a few casinos I have circled that I've avoided because kind of same as you, I didn't really want to push it. But in Nevada, it's very unlikely. I do know one person and they went back like 4 times close together and like were running from they kind of didn't approach it the right way. But then other places, I don't know. I would say just be aware of the law. Like they could, if they've read you the Trespass Act, they could. They probably don't want to, and then decide for yourself. But there's just so many casinos. But as far as sister properties, the way I approached it is once I was backed off from an MGM property, I played all the other ones just unrated. Same with the Harrah's Caesars properties. Once I got backed off, I think it was Bally's, I continued to play all the other ones just unrated.
Yeah, the other headache of going back to the place you've been trespassed is once they figure it out, now you have to figure out what you want to do with your chips, and then you have to have a friend cash them. It just becomes a big headache because you could go back in, cash out some of them, and if they require your ID, if you give them your ID, it could immediately send alarm bells up to security. So then it's just a whole.
This is a place you've been trespassed at, you're saying? Yeah. But with the sister properties, just don't be afraid to play other ones. They might say to you, oh, well, you're backed off from all MGM properties. That's not true. They cannot back you off or trespass you from a property you're not physically at. So you're only backed off at that one. The problem is if you use your player's card, odds are it's going to trigger something on their screen if you are playing rated. If you were playing unrated at, let's say, Bally's and they back you off and they don't know your name, you could probably use a player's card still at Caesars or Harrah's or whatever it may be. Next question. With recent advancements in technology, can you speak to the threat of facial recognition software to counters and if that technology is becoming more widespread?
In T-Dane's Art of Casino Surveillance, this is going to feel like a commercial for the whole episode, but just we're not getting a cut of this book.
Our only sponsor is Blackjack Apprenticeship.
Yeah. But he has a chapter in his book almost about facial recognition. I just want to bring out a few key points here. In his book, he says, in the beginning, I was not a fan of facial recognition. There was just way too many false hits. But today, high definition cameras, software upgrades, it's getting much more accurate. A casino that's a newer or larger result will most likely be using facial recognition. If there's even the slightest doubt on a hit, surveillance must not pursue. So that's one positive to facial recognition is if there's not 100% confirmed. You can't just go up to that player and say that they're trespass, and act on that. And then it also says facial recognition hit should always start with a request to identify the subject. That means if the hit comes through, surveillance can request an ID check. If it's not a match or it's a false hit, no other action should be taken. This is interesting. Some facial recognition systems that are linked to an outside database, which casinos can't subscribe to, but the newer facial recognition systems, for some reason, are all in-house systems. They're not pooling information from other casinos around the country. That's good. I don't know why they're doing that, but that's good for us.
I wonder if there are legal reasons why.
Could be. They are not networked with other casinos or other sister properties. That's really crazy. That the in-house facial recognition, it must be some legal red tape there.
I know Texas just sued Facebook and settled for like a crap ton of money because Facebook was allowing it would suggest you tagging people using facial recognition. And somehow Texas is like, yeah, that violates people's privacy or something, which I don't know how that works. I tried to talk to Bob Nersession about it at the Blackjack Ball, and he was just like, well, Texas is different. I was saying, hey, is this a case against surveillance databases? And he was like, no, they can do this, but maybe they can only do it at their property. Maybe they can't share this with other properties or something.
Here's another note from the book. Any entry or exit point will most likely have the facial recognition camera. So those are those choke points that we know about. So it's always good to try to find that side entrance, hotel entrances, valet, those kind of side ones. They don't have facial recognition cameras all over the casino floor. It's just one or two places. If an AP was to walk into a casino that is known to have a facial recognition system, simply looking down or squinching the face during the entry can bypass the camera.
Yeah.
Tie-dye shirts and shirts with faces also tend to fool facial recognition cameras.
That's cool intel.
And then to end, plus sides, downsides. The downsides is the high definition of the camera. It's getting better at identifying faces. But the good news for us in the book is that because of this facial recognition use, the workload of the surveillance department is being increased. So now they're busy pursuing all these trespass undesirables, not APs, but just people who are drunk and got kicked out. They're getting hits all the time now on that kind of stuff. So there's just like a huge database of undesirables, and that takes time away from the gaming tables. So that's good news for APs.
This really aligns with what our experience has been, which is some of the new, super expensive, high-end Vegas resorts, like the Arias or Fontainebleau. They might have this stuff, but that doesn't mean it's widespread around the country. And there are those entry points. And I was thinking the exact same thing, like a hat on and my face down when I walk in. And still, don't back yourself off. Don't say, oh, well, I can't try to count cards because facial recognition. People have been paranoid about this for decades. And I'm not saying it's not getting better, but I also know plenty of people making 6 or some even making 7 figures from advantage play. So, don't back yourself off. Speaking of backed off, here's our next question. When you are backed off, are you backed off in a whole geographic area?
That really depends, but a lot of times if you're getting flyered, it's being flyered to the neighboring.
So you're not technically backed off from the whole area, but there are parts of the country where they share info so quickly. I talked with a guy, maybe you're listening, there's a young card counter that started played a whole bunch at a local casino, eventually got backed off and went to the next place and got backed off there. And so he's like, well, am I going to get backed off from the next place? So he drove to the next place and got backed up there and drove to the 4th casino in his area and got back. It was like, dude, when you've got heat in the area, stop playing, let it cool down because those bolos be on the lookout. They don't last that long. What? Maybe a week, 2 weeks. If you walk into a second place in a region and they back you off quickly, let the whole region cool down for a month. And then they'll completely forget about you, and you still have those other casinos at your disposal. But you're not technically backed off. You just might get backed off quickly if they're sharing your info. All right, our next question, it actually goes to what is the difference between getting banned and trespassing or asked to leave. Here's the question. When you get asked to leave, are you actually banned where it's trespassing and a crime if you go back. In other words, can you ever be arrested, or is the worst that happens is they ask you to leave again? This is really important to know the difference. I've put it in YouTube videos. There's like, the 3 tiers that I talk about in our video, The Truth About Backoffs. The 3 tiers, there's like the pre-back-off stuff where they might shuffle on you or do something that they don't actually want to back you off, but they kind of want to like give you the hint. And then the 3 backoffs are, hey, no more blackjack, in which case, no more blackjack. You can still do anything else. The next is like, all right, you're done here. They don't want you playing anything in the casino. And then the third is a trespass. And those are very different. And to know if you're trespassed, if it could be violating the Trespass Act to come back, is that they've read you the Trespass Act. If they've not read you this official document that says we have a right to arrest you for trespassing, then you are not trespassed unless they don't do the paperwork right, which is incredibly rare, but has happened.
Yeah, the language is really vague, which is, I think, why a lot of these trespass cases kind of just disappear, because they usually don't have video on hand of them reading you a Trespass Act and they present it to court. Like, they're not going to keep that stuff usually. So I think that's why some APs take the mindset of like, I don't care about the trespass. They're not going to be able to enforce it. The wordage was so vague when they trespassed me.
And I would say, I've got about 100 backoffs and probably 10 trespasses. And you have stats on all of yours. It's probably similar, right? Like about 10% of the time it's a trespass act. So 90% of the time you can go back. And even with the trespass, if it's Nevada, you can go back in 2 years. Everywhere else, that's up to your own discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I would be careful about going back to a place you're trespassed at a tribal, where they could definitely like refuse to pay you out if they want to, because you're trespassed.
It's their sovereign land. Be cautious. Like, we've had very good experiences at 99% of the tribal casinos in the US in the last decade or so. But you do want to just be aware you are violating what they said, and you tread lightly if it's a tribal. That's a good point. Next question. Are you only required to show ID to a police officer and not to an armed casino security officer?
I haven't encountered any armed casino security officers yet, thankfully.
Sometimes yeah. Oh my gosh. That's kind of terrifying that it's someone that just like, to become a police officer, there's a level of training and everything. And then sometimes you get a loose cannon cop, but security guard, I don't know if the training is the same and you're arming them, but which is how some of those lawsuits happen. You get a, overzealous security guard that thinks that you actually were cheating and that they can just not rough you up, but whatever's, manhandle you, strong arm you. I would say, if it's a police officer, yes, I would show ID. If it was a security officer, I would say, no, thank you, I'm leaving, and I would walk to the exit. And if they get in my way, I would say, are you detaining me against my will? I would like to leave, and say it. Don't shout it, but loud enough that it can be heard, and walk to the exit. Again, like, I've not ever even had this. I'm just saying, if this happened to me, that's what I would do. I have had a cop. It was because a freaking casino lied to the cop and said that, I'd been doing something nefarious. So the cop, of course, took their side until he got to the bottom of it, but it was too late. He gave them my ID. And then he was like apologizing and asking if I could teach him how to count cards. But that was the only time I've ever even had to show a cop. I know there are those states, Indiana, some of those states where the gaming officers are actually cops. And so you do have to show them ID if they suspect you of a crime.
Yeah. That might be what they're talking about, is the armed security. Maybe they mean the armed gaming agents that
could be.
They say gaming agent, but they actually are law enforcement in those Midwest states.
That's Loudon Often's story in Tales from the Felt. Is he's like, I want to talk to the police. They're like, we are the police. He's like, no, the real police. They're like, we are the real police. Because some of those states, if you're not from there, you think that they're just gaming agents or whatever. So yeah, if they suspect you of a crime, you need to show ID. Otherwise, you could say, I would just like to leave. If it's a cop, I would show him ID. If that's what I'd say, hey, I'm showing you ID. I'm not showing the casino ID because I have not done anything. illegal, I would like to leave. But that is super, super rare situations. Next, legal consideration. If I show up at a bank to deposit a lot of cash, well, a lot for me, say 20 to 50,000, will I have any unusual problems?
Yeah, maybe 20 to 25,000 is a lot for them.
This is 20 to 50.
Yeah, that's a lot for them. The nationwide chain banks, they freak out. They don't like a lot of withdrawals, especially withdrawals, cashes all the time. They hate that.
Yes, they don't deal with cash. Banks don't deal with large amounts of cash. Casinos do. It's amazing. You go to the bank and they cash out $20,000. It takes 3 times as long as at a casino cashing out $20,000. Casino, they're so used to, they're just like, da, 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 busting out all the $100 bills, and then you're on your way. The bank is like, oh my goodness, why do you even need this money?
I recently had to do this a few weeks ago. So I went to my bank, which is a national chain, and, I go up to the counter and I'm like, hey, I need to make a large cash withdrawal. Do you guys have like a private window or something? Because there's a bunch of people around and I want to, do this. And they're like, well, how much do you need? And I was like, well, if you could do 20, that would be great if you have it. And they're like, no, we don't have it here. We're a smaller branch. Well, you can do 10 here and then do 10 somewhere else and do 10. I was like, no, I want to do it all at once.
Yeah.
Like,
to look like
I don't want to
structuring.
because I've been backed off of a different bank for doing that because they only carried 10 on hand. So I would do 10, 10, 10, not trying to avoid any CTR, but purely just because they didn't have it on hand. I needed it quick.
So, and that's the issue that you could have is they can back you off. The church team, we got backed off from several national chains, even though we were legally depositing and withdrawing our own money. But what we would do is we might have someone in the Midwest that needed a bunch of money. They were a co-signer on the account, and I would, deposit 50 grand and they would withdraw 50 grand or 80 grand or whatever. And the bank's like, this looks like drugs. And I said, hey, look, we have a business license. They did not care. They're just like, yeah, we don't want to bank with you. So then we stopped doing that, especially the large withdrawals.
Yeah. And this was like, I had a time sensitive thing I had to do. So it was kind of like I had to do it quick. But yeah, I went to the other branch that had more. It was kind of the same approach. You kind of have to like sort of negotiate with them how much you can withdraw in a comfortable amount to them.
Yeah.
So I went up there and I was like, well, can you guys swing 25? Like I had to say that. I was like, can you guys handle, you need to do like 25? And then she was like, oh yeah, it's no problem. I was like, oh, actually, can you do 35? And then you kind of have to do that. And then it was fine. But yeah, it is that like sort of dance of like.
Did you say, I've got a lot of drugs I need to purchase?
No, they do ask you like what you do for a living and all that stuff. So sometimes it gets a little tricky because they usually don't like professional gambling as
I would say I'm a poker pro because people know that that's a thing and it doesn't sound nefarious. Professional gambler sounds shady, but I'm a professional poker player. But yeah, that is the risk, is that they could back you off from your bank. That's why we tried to avoid those large withdrawals and found other ways, to store the cash and not have too much cash at any one safe, at any one person's house or whatever, but have very, very good money security systems. But that's the risk. Banks don't like money. They don't like money leaving their bank. All right, camouflage techniques and cover play. Our first question here is beatable side bets in casinos. Can they be used as cover, and if so, how?
It depends on the side bet.
Yeah, I mean, what's the beatable side bet would be my question. There are the ones that I think everybody knows that correlate with high-low, like Lucky Ladies and King's Bounty. And those correlate with high-low because the side bet is, are your first 2 cards going to add up to 20? Well, if there's a high count, there's more 10s available. The problem is it becomes valuable at a true 6.5, or if you want to be conservative, at a true 7. Well, you get a true 7 or higher, 3% of the time. So we're talking 3 hands an hour on average. You could go 2 hours without and then have some monster shoe where you're betting it for 10 hands. Is that enough that it's going to work as cover? Probably not. There are other beatable side bets that you can occasionally find. And usually, if we've found one, we're not using it as cover. We're using it as the advantage play. I don't really want to go into detail about it, but if you find something and you have a count that correlates with it, that's your angle, not beating the main blackjack bet.
Yeah. There's been times when I would have one of those side bets that correlate with a count, and that brought on more heat for me, playing those along with the counting.
Interesting. Yeah, because casinos aren't that smart, or maybe they know, oh yeah, well, some of these side bets can be beat, or they have a superstition or whatever, and they're guessing that they're right, and they are in this case. But for it to work as cover, they have to be smart enough to know, oh, side bets, a counter wouldn't do that, but not smart enough to know that sometimes a counter might do that. What I'm afraid some people do is say, well, I don't want to get backed off, so why don't I play the side bets as cover? The problem is, if you're betting $25 at a true zero and below on the main bet, that's costing you about 12 or 13 cents a hand to play. If you're betting just $5 on a side bet and it has a 10% edge, then you're giving up 50 cents every hand you play. That side bet is costing you 4 times as much. Or the other way to think about it is at a true 3, to make that 50 cents, you'd have to be betting $500 to make that 50 cents. Are you betting $500? And if you are betting $500 at a true 3, you're breaking even between that side bet for cover. The point being, playing side bets for cover is far too expensive unless you've got some mafia casino situation where the main bet is worth like $10 a hand.
Usually, if you do find a beatable side bet that's not one of these well-known ones that correlate with high-low, the hourly tends to be higher than the card counting. So in that scenario, you're focusing on the side bet. You're not using the side bet as cover.
Yes, or even if it's not more EV, it's going to be harder for a casino to know that you're attacking a side bet if you're flat betting the main bet. Why bring attention to yourself if they might not know the side bet's beatable?
Yeah, like you're saying, if it's let's say the side bet is worth $150 an hour, but the card counting is worth $200 an hour, you would just flat bet the blackjack, not card count there.
Yeah, table minimum.
Yeah, and just do take the $150 an hour.
Because you might last for ages. Now, we're getting a little bit advanced. I'm afraid that probably 99% of people listening might be taking this mental note. Okay, sometimes side bets are worth playing. Very, very rarely. You need to quantify and calculate it, which is why this information is rare, because it's so valuable. It's not really out there. And the way we've exploited it is by finding something interesting and like being able to run it ourselves with software or hiring someone that could run it for us to be able to do this. So that's like the rare exception. Don't think that you should be playing side bets unless you know quantifiably with simulation software it's positive EV.
Yeah, and one last note. There are these side bets where don't just like look at the side bet and be like, oh, that's probably beatable. You see a bunch of certain target number cards come out and you're like, okay, I think I should bet it and experiment a little bit. Do not do that, because even if you have a beatable side bet and you have the exact strategy on how to play it, just the pay table differences alone from casino can take a beatable side bet to a not beatable side bet.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that say, oh, like the bust it or buster or something. Oh, well, the dealer's going to bust in a high count. Yeah, the casinos are smart enough to have those not correlate with high-low. When in doubt, do your research. All right, moving on. Joe748, how much do you use betting camouflage like discussed in Don Schlesinger's and Ian Anderson's books?
I don't. There's been maybe 2 sessions out of all the sessions I've done where I've tried it. And one of those sessions, it didn't even work. I still got backed off in like 2 hours.
Yeah, I tell that story in the 21st Century Card Counter, the book I wrote, I don't know, about 7 years ago, that I used Ian Anderson's Ultimate Gambit it was called the London Club. It used to be upstairs of the Aladdin, which is now Planet Hollywood, this fancy high limit room. And I was like, I'm going to use his Ultimate Gambit. And just like his book, I'm going to last forever. Well, I'm up 24 grand after half an hour and I get backed off. And all I could think about leaving is how much EV did I leave on the table using this huge betting camouflage situation. Well, guess what? You can quantify it. If you have CV data, you can quantify, you can put in a bet spread where you only raise your bet if you won the last hand, you only lower your bet if you lost the last hand. And I have run the data, and it is incredibly expensive to use that betting camouflage. Some of his playing camouflage, like always standing a 16 against a 10 and ace, whatever, he has a handful of playing decisions. Those aren't very expensive. I also put that in my book. It's like chapter 7, I think, but you could read that. And I break it down. That's not very expensive. How much time it buys you, I don't know. But the betting cover, where you're not betting with the count, it can cost you like 40% of your EV. And so if you want to last longer, drop your top bet by 40%, and you'll last longer than trying this stuff. Now, am I saying they're wrong? No, I'm saying they wrote those books in the 90s. Burning the Tables came out in 2002. And so he's talking about techniques he used in the 90s in Las Vegas, in high limit rooms with 4-deck games with 1 deck or less cutoff. It was a different game, stand 17, all the good rules. And also he claimed he could add an extra top bet on top of it to make up for the EV loss. Well, in today's game, it's not the same rules, not the same pen, and it's the bet spread. It's the movement of small to top bet. It's not the like, oh, wait a second, he only raised his bet when he won. It's giving him too much credit to say that they're tracking that today. Did it work back then? I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that it was really good marketing for his book. I'm not trying to throw, like, I voted Ian Anderson into the Blackjack Hall of Fame. Like, I think the world of him. Don Schlesinger, same thing. Tons of respect. Those techniques, perhaps they worked in the 80s and 90s. I don't know a single pro that uses those techniques today.
It's sort of the fantasy that's been going on since Kurt Getting was invented and casinos started figuring out was like, how can I get away with this without them knowing about it? How can I continue this 1% edge forever without any backoffs? The answer is you can't.
Yeah, like there are things that we do to last longer, but casinos also adapt. And the reason I don't know a single pro that does this isn't because we haven't tried or we're too dumb to think of it. It's that it doesn't work, but, find out for yourself if it's worth it.
Now let's bring up another point in The Art of Casino Surveillance by T. Dane. Radical Blackjack talked about this, the whole BJ survey.
Oh, yes.
So there are some casinos that use software called BJ Survey, where the surveillance agent will input all of your bets along what the count was, and then it'll spit out, percentages of what your advantage is and how much of a threat you are to the casino. So there are some things you can do to try to fool the software. And in T. Dane's book, he says some properties, they would wait until 2 positive surveys before they would take action on a player. And that's because a player can fool the software by flat betting for the first couple of shoes or making wild errors such as hitting a hard 18 or splitting a 20 with minimal wagers. The problem with this is you have to know that they're using it.
Yes.
And you have to know that they're using it in that moment.
When you first show up at a casino, why would they be using BJ Survey on you if you're not moving your bets? So what you would need to do is start counting cards, moving your bets, and then the moment you know they're using BJ Survey, start flat betting or do something silly. But that's impossible guesswork. And what is the cost of hitting a hard 18? You're basically throwing away an entire bet. I mean, I guess if it's a $25 table and your EV's 300 an hour, you can do that. But you'd have to know that they're entering it in.
Yeah, like the best you could do is you have really reliable knowledge that they use BJ Survey, and then once you start playing, you bet big for the first time, and if the pit goes right to the phone after that, then maybe the next couple of shoes, they're going to try to run the survey on you. It's still guesswork, still comes at a cost, but in T. Dane's book, he says, once you pass the audit, you're clear for a while.
That's cool. I mean, I'd love to see someone that plays Vegas a lot try this, what you said, like start spreading when the pit calls up, flat bet, and do a couple, like knowing you're throwing money away, errors for 3 shoes. And if like you see him, the phone rings, he gets back on it and he's like, okay, all right, go back to spreading, or would you even like leave and come back later knowing that, if they look you up, they're like, oh no, we've run him down. He's not good. It's just, if you had any way of knowing when they're doing what in surveillance, that would be a different thing. It's just really hard to know.
They could be busy for the next hour and they're like, okay, I'll do the survey in an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, they're chasing down facial recognition undesirables. Next question. Have you ever used someone else's player's card to give the appearance you're playing rated? I've told this story before. I tried this once. It was a friend's card, and then they still asked for my ID, and I was like, what do? Do I play or do I walk away? And so I gave them my ID, and they're like, the card was like Travis Johnson or something. It was actually a friend of a friend. And they're like, you're not Travis Johnson. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not my player's card. Like, sorry, I must have grabbed the wrong card. And so then they printed me out a player's card with my name on it, but it didn't work for me. To be honest, like, I don't know the legality of this. Like, could you be accused of fraud for playing? Another thing I have done is actually gotten my wife to get a player's card, and we'll both be betting, of course, with the count and all that stuff, but it's getting rated under her so that I'm playing, but they never ask. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. We'll just put my play on her card. I've done that.
I actually haven't done this, not because I don't want to, but I'm just afraid of a lot of the pit. When they scan the card, they see the driver's license photo pop up, and they're going to immediately know it's not you.
Yes. It was different 20 years ago, or whatever, 15 years ago. Players' cards weren't associated. If somehow someone got a player's card with a passport or something where it didn't take a picture, that might work. But to be honest, it's not really something that either of us have done. So, next question. Do you use more cover when playing during the daytime, Monday to Friday, since the casino is less crowded? Or do you take advantage of the casino being slower for more potential heads-up time and maximize the opportunity? Ooh, does T-Dane have some insight for us?
We have something. There's a nice little thing in here about a tidbit about how in surveillance there is a culture of placing new operators on grave shift. So that could be the reason why a lot of BJA members in the past have been successful with playing graveyard uninterrupted. There's also, in smaller properties with revenue less than 15 million, this is in Vegas, the regulations only require the casino to have an employee with a working knowledge of the surveillance system to be on property 24/7. Smaller casino surveillance is not watched live all the time. So if there's only a certain threshold amount of revenue, they don't even have to have someone watching the cameras. In Nevada, which I've actually played somewhere where they didn't have someone actively watching the game. Like a mistake would happen on the table and the pit boss would call over the manager and the manager would have to go into the back room.
My gosh.
We could see her going into the back. We saw her open the door and go in, check the VHS tapes and then come back out and say, yeah, there was an error on that. So we knew no one was watching.
I was playing, this is like a tiny casino in Washington many years ago. And I'm playing for, a couple hours and then I decide to get a little comp and get a free like cheeseburger or something from their crappy deli. And so I'm in line and this lady right behind me is like, hey, you're that guy that's betting big. And she was the surveillance person taking a break also. That was how small of a casino it was. Like, oh, she's taking a break. No one's in the surveillance room. Original question is, do you use more cover daytime, Monday through Friday? Well, I mean, that's not really my preferred time to play because it's not necessarily true, but it feels like it's more the A team gets the day shift. Like the more experienced pit bosses and surveillance people, they've got seniority. They want to work days and have nights off. Also, most gamblers are not like on tilt chasing their money at noon. But they might be at midnight, 1 a.m. So I tended to play evenings, 9 p.m. until I was too tired to play. It just seemed like better playing conditions to me, but I didn't change my approach depending on the time of day. What about you?
No.
Yeah, I knew that. I just wanted to ask. Last question of the day. I'm currently only completely wonging out of the table when the true count reaches -2. But I was wondering if there's more conspicuous cover for staying at the table, hoping the count swings the other way. Oh my gosh, we just talked about this on another podcast. I've been thinking about sitting out hands to count my chips when the true count is -1 to save myself some EV, but that can only be used so often. Yeah, I would say you got to have a repertoire of things to do. The first thing could be like it gets to below a true -1 and you say, oh, you guys go ahead. The shoe's really bad for me. And pretend like you're adding up your chips. If the count doesn't get back above 0 in 1 or 2 hands, you got to do something else, leave the table. You don't want to just sit there, but other things of the repertoire is just walk away or say, hey, hold my spot. I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And they'll put the little plastic chip there to save your spot and just be back when they're shuffling. You could also just say, I'm going to try another table. Good luck, everybody. But what you can't do is just play negative counts that your bankroll can't handle.
Yeah, and don't feel the need that you have to give them an excuse every time you leave the table.
To have an excuse, just leave.
A lot of new card counters, they think that and I've seen them in the casino, they'll be in the table next to me and I see them, declare why they're leaving and it just feels so
just say
unnatural.
Good luck. Hey, good luck, guys. Have a good one. And they'll appreciate that more than some awkward explanation. No one cares. Everybody's thinking about themselves. No one's thinking about you unless you're bothering them, right? Yeah. Isn't that kind of life?
Yeah.
Everybody's thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about you unless they have a reason to. Don't give them a reason to think about you. Anything else from T. Dane's book you want to share with us?
There was just one thing I thought was really interesting. He was talking about quick to snap joints, this section about certain places, and he has a whole I'm not going to list it. You can get the book, but there's a whole list.
Well, hopefully we'll have him on the podcast and we can ask him about the whole list.
There's a whole list of casinos that he points out that are really,
oh my gosh,
quick to react.
Just looking at the list, I 100% agree with his list. Number 1, Treasure Island. Y'all, why are you playing Treasure Island? You know you're going to get backed off in 15 minutes. Do you want to increase your chances of being put in a database? If you don't want to increase your chances of being put in a database, don't even bother trying to generate $10 of EV at Treasure Island.
In here, accompanied with the list, he says, this is for Vegas. If the property is not listed, they are most likely not sharing information to other casinos. So it's a really valuable list to have. And then he goes on to say MGM casinos, for example, are known to gladly receive information from other casinos, but rarely or never share the information outside the company.
Very good to know.
Another really interesting part was he was talking about how APs can utilize LinkedIn and other hiring websites to see which surveillance departments are hiring a lot. And that's when you know that there's a lot of mismanagement going on. There could be a lot of holes there in the people watching. So he's done that in the past.
That's very good to know. Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll get him on a podcast. Until then, you guys can learn a lot more at Blackjack Apprenticeship. Hey, BJ members, thank you for sharing those questions. If you shared one of these questions on another social media platform, thank you. But, the goods is in the membership, training suite, video course, community, casino database, betting software, like things that you actually need if you're anything more than gambling with card counting. If you want to actually beat the game, you need the tools. That's what we provide. And until next time, have a good one.